Shri Ganesha Sharada Gurubhyo Namaha Agajanana Padmarkam Gajananam Aharnisham Anekadam Tam Bhaktanam Ekadantam Upasmahe. Welcome back to all listeners to this story of Ganesha Purana, in which we are now in chapter 2. In the last chapter, from where the Ganesha Purana has started, we have heard about a king called as Somakantha. Suta had explained this story to Shaunakas, who are the sages who are listening to his story. And while narrating the story, he started with the story of Somakantha, who has everything the best in his life. He was so intelligent, as much more intelligent than the master of all the gods and goddesses. It's believed in the philosophy of India that there is something called as Devaloka, and all the gods and goddesses they were remaining there in that particular Devaloka, and they are almost considered as equivalent to that supreme single deity. They are equivalent to, they are next to him. They are not basically the gods and goddesses. Anyway, in some other video, I'll narrate you who are these gods and goddesses and where they do exist in our body. We'll come back to the story. Such he was much more powerful than those gods and goddesses. He was much more intelligent than their master. And these gods and goddesses, they had their own person who maintains their treasury. And this king was considered to be much more richer than the treasurer. He was having so much of richness. And he was having the best of the best ministers in his Astana. In his in this kingdom, he was having the best of the people, as the support of all the people, and he was having the best wife, who was so beautiful, wearing so many ornaments, so much beautiful, and he himself was such a righteous person that he never made a mistake in his life. And he was always like a father to their children. He was like, he treated all his subjects as though he is their father and as though all these subjects are his sons and daughters. Such a righteous person. But the thing is, does such an ideal person can ever exist? It may be only in our imagination. That such an idealism is what we all would like to have. And let's assume that Somakantha had one such kind of a wonderful ideal life and he never made any mistake. Normally, our belief is when we are doing everything right, the God should protect us, God should take care of us. And with that, we make a commitment with the God, the so called God, saying that He is supposed to take care of us and we should, nothing wrong should happen to us because everything right should happen, but it doesn't so. The most righteous person will have something wrong in their life. In this country, India, we had a person who was known all over the world for his peacefulness. Mahatma Gandhi. He was shot dead at the end. And there was a great person much before him whom even Mahatma Gandhi has revered, Gautama Buddha. It is assumed that in his lifetime, at the end of his life, he was poisoned to death. Why such bad things happen only with the right people? Can we ever think of Mahatma Gandhi doing something wrong or Gautama Buddha doing something wrong? There may be people who make comment even on that also, but that's a different thing. The whole world think that these are two great people who are always known for ahimsa and satya, and yet there was something wrong happened in their life. And then comes the Indian philosophy. It's all return of karma. Karma, they have not done anything bad in their life. They might not have done anything bad in their life, but there may be something about their past life, their previous birth. Every Indian generally believes in this reincarnation that we die and then again we reborn in a different second birth. So here also a similar thing happened. Suta Goswami he explained to the sages, now you must have all heard about Somakantha's. Now you're going to hear about. You have so far heard about only the Somakantha's present life. Now you're going to hear about Somakantha's past life. As a consequence of his accumulated bad karma, may not be from this life, maybe from the past life, he suddenly began to ooze with leprosy, which was very painful. Whether it is good or bad, karma always accompanies living beings. Whatever actions a person performs before their experiences in future lives. That means in the past life, whatever karma they had done, which they might not be knowing, they may not be knowing anything about their past life. Whether the past life really exists or not, scientifically, no one has a proof. But there is something that is following in the future lives. So, which often sometimes when we cannot narrate it for because of which karma in the present life, we simply assign it to some karma you might have done in the past life. As if he was a rudderless boat in the ocean, wandering around without any direction. The king became immersed in an ocean of sorrow. He felt so much pain as if he was bitten by a snake. The distraught king was completely covered with sores, dripping with purulent blood and worms. He became very thin and deranged with anxiety. He experienced pain in all of his senses. Then, with great effort, the king spoke to his ministers. Anyone who was living such a rich life at some point of a time, if he is struck with such a bad disease like the leprosy, because of which his whole body was covered with wound, which is oozing out blood and worms, the bad blood and the worms, with so much of pain in every nook and corner of his body, he loses the complete faith. I mean, before the faith, he loses the complete interest in his life. And thus happened similar kind of a thing with the king Somakantha. And he called his ministers because he is a king who is taking care of this whole kingdom. Now, how he can continue with those kind of things? King Somakantha said, "Curse my kingdom and body, curse my strength, life, and wealth. What has caused this horrible misfortune? I have surpassed Soma in splendor." Soma is basically the name for Chandra, who is considered to be the most beautiful. But what is the use? Hence, because of that reason, he was so beautiful, much more beautiful than Soma. Because of that reason, he was called Somakantha. I have protected the good, the wretched, and protected the learned Brahmins, their hermitages, as well as all nations. It's basically here means he had protected the good, bad, even the bad people, wretched, even those people also were protected by him. Not just that. Brahmins here basically means the people who are always involved in gaining the knowledge. They're like the researchers, scientists who take care of the knowledge part of the society, and they're hermitages because they don't have their own source of earning. They cannot protect themselves. So even those people were protected by him, and as just not just them, he protected the whole nation. I have looked after my subjects as though they are my very own children. I have defeated fierce enemies and conquered the entire earth with a controlled mind and no false attachments. I worshipped Sadashiva as the supreme self. Of course, he may be a Shaiva, and because of that reason, he had preached, he had worshipped Sadashiva, the supreme self, and with great devotion. And he had done everything good, even in terms of his deeds. In spite of that, previously my body was fragrantly scented, but because I now emit a foul smell, my life is worthless. For these reasons, and with your permission, I will retire to the forest. Because generally in Indian philosophy, it is assumed that when it is time for you, that you will neither be able to take care of your day-to-day duties like taking care of the kingdom or doing any such duty as a dutiful husband or a dutiful king or a dutiful officer. When you cannot do further things, that was a time when they used to simply quit all the duties and retire to the forest. It's called as vanaprastha. That means he retired, he go to a forest and he start looking towards the spiritual aspects of his life. Because generally till then he was involved in making money, getting power, and so many things. Now this is the time to say goodbye to everything. For the sake of my kingdom, you must consecrate my son, because there should be someone to follow him, someone to inherit his kingdom. So he says that he has a son called as Hemakantha. So he should be put in the place of a king and he should be taking care of it. So he asked his ministers to consecrate his son Hemakantha, who possesses valor and intelligence. As king, you must protect him courageously. I will never be able to show my face in this world. So there is no point in having kingdom, wives, nor a life of regality, prime ministers. I'm leaving for the forest to practice austerities for my own liberation. This is generally the concept, that at the end of the life, as you reach towards the end of the life, that you should give up everything for your children or for the next generation. If it is inherited aspects, you leave it everything to your children and then you retire to the forest. But why is it so? It's basically because when you cross certain age, if you still remain in the house, you still try to exercise your powers, or at least in your presence, your next generation will not be able to learn anything, will not be able to know how to lead a life and how to exercise their power. Your absence is very much necessary for that. This our forefathers have observed, and because of that reason, they have brought it as some kind of a rule that when people get older, they should leave everything to their next generation and should retire to the forest. Because only when they quit their position and leave their houses, that is when exactly the children will going to learn how to live. But here is a very sorrowful story. Somakantha is leaving not just because he is old, which is a usual practice, but here he is encountered with leprosy and he lost all the grandeur of his life. He lost the beauty. There is a foul smell coming from his body which people don't like to even come nearer to him. Such a bad thing happened in his life. Suta continued the explanation. Excellent Brahmins, after the king spoke, he fell to the ground like a tree blown over by the wind, his body covered by streams of warm, purulent blood. The ministers and young women cried loudly along with the rest of his subjects, who made dreadful cries of distress. By the use of healing herbs, sacred medicines, and by fanning him and wiping his body, the ministers revived him. When the king was feeling somewhat better, his ministers spoke to him as follows. The ministers said, because of you, we have all enjoyed happiness equal to that of Indra, the king of the god. How will we live without you? How will we protect the cows? Cows are considered as the wealth of the country. How will you protect the cows? Your worthy son will now rule the kingdom. Hemakantha is a strong leader and possesses great wealth, but leaving behind all happiness, we will now accompany you to the forest. If, as a king, if you are leaving for the forest, yes, now no doubt your son is having a great valor, is a great leader, and he will certainly take care of the kingdom. But we cannot live without you. So we will also follow you to the forest. Sutta continued the explanation. His chief wife and heroine, that means she is the Maharani, Sudharma, declared that she would also accompany the king to the forest. Generally, in the Indian philosophy, it is assumed that the king and the queen are basically the husband and wife. They are supposed to be born to be a match and to be always together. Of course, at some point of a time, they get married, and the marriage should continue and the marriage can only break by the death of one of them. There is no concept of divorcing in the middle and marrying somebody else. It is never accepted in this society. They assume that they are made for each other and they live together forever, not just in one birth. They even continue their life, love and the life in the subsequent births also. It is their bond is so strong. It is not just whether they really continue, whether there exists really a rebirth, nobody knows. But their bond is so strong that when the king, it is the king who was attacked with the leprosy, and he wanted to leave to the forest. And if he leave the kingdom and if he goes to the forest, then who will be there to take care of him? Sudharma was filled with so much of love. She says that whatever is the situation, I will take care of the king. I will follow him into the forest. And even his ministers were ready to leave the kingdom, leave all their powers, wealth, everything, and they also want to follow him. Sudharma, the queen, said, I'll stay with him until the end of my life. But you ministers should stay here. You must help my son to rule the kingdom as I would. When one is mated with another, they must both suffer and enjoy the results of their previous karmas together. I enjoyed. That's what Sudharma is saying. I enjoyed my life with the king. Now, in his sorrowful days, in during his bad days, I can't leave him. I'll go along with him. And whatever karma he was having, he is suffering it in his body. And let me also be accompanied with him so that I can help him to overcome his sorrows. The king and I both enjoyed many pleasures of the kingdom together and separately. But the Shastras prescribe that a woman should accompany her husband in this world, not just in this world, but also in the next. That means after the death, to wherever the husband goes, the wife should follow. And it was the same thing. When the wife goes, the husband also supposed to follow. But that may not be practiced all the time because of the polygamy that was practiced during the olden days. But yet, it is generally assumed that when the husband dies, the wife is supposed to follow him even in the death. That's what she says. Sutta continues. The refined Hemakantha, grief stricken, spoke the following words to his father. Hemakantha, who is the son of Somakantha, he says, Without you, I cannot be responsible for the kingdom. Wives are the riches. Just as a lamp cannot burn without oil, or a body without the breath is useless, so is this kingdom will be useless without you. Sutta continues. After he heard the king kind words of his minister's wife and son, the king, delighted at heart, addressed his son concerning dharma. Because any king or any father would be, or any husband would be very happy to see his ministers following him. His wife wanted to follow. His son don't want to live back, leaving his father. Any father would be very happy at that point. And the king said, A son who always obeys his father and offers oblations to the ancestors is indeed a real son. A son like this will also bear a good son who understands the true meaning of dharma and of correct political conduct. Here, dharma is not equivalent to the religion. Dharma is something that he is supposed to follow as a son. Dharma of a king, what the king is supposed to do at different circumstances. The dharma of a husband, the dharma of a wife, the dharma of a minister. So everybody has their own dharma which is supposed to be followed. So here he talks about the dharma of a good son who is paying so much of great respect to his parents, and he will certainly going to be blessed with the son or daughter who will also going to equally love him. Therefore, I give my command for you to preside over the kingdom. You love me so much. You love me so that you will also going to respect my words. So that's the reason why I command you to preside over this kingdom, which was built by me, and you are supposed to continue taking care of this kingdom. In cooperation with my ministers, rule these subjects as though they were your own children covered with leprosy and beyond contempt. I'll go to the forest with Sudharma Please agree to this. My strong, vowed son, who has so much of respect and love in me, please consider this as my command and follow, take care of this kingdom. Thus ends the second chapter of Upasana Khanda of the glorious Ganesha Purana called Somakantha's Renunciation. This happens in the life of everybody who is having everything the great, the best in their life. And at some point of a time, when they are stuck with unluck, bad luck, and the gods, and if something, everything start going bad in their life, they start thinking that this is the time I should leave this world, or before leaving the world. Generally, one cannot commit a suicide. So generally, people assume that when they say, I want to leave this world, it's not about dying. It's about leaving the world where they enjoyed all the richness, all the relations, everything, and then retire to the forest, stay there alone, or some often with wife or with the husband, stay there alone and only think about the God. And it's the last stage of their life where they can think of about the concept of spirit, and they'll practice spirituality. And this is what Somakantha is interested. Namaste Sharada Devi, Kashmira Puravasini, Tamaham Prarthaye Nityam, Vidya Danancha Dehime. Goodbye.